Welcome back again, everybody. Today we're looking at the volume of rectangular and triangular prisms. Now, in elementary school, most of you were taught that the formula for finding volume of a rectangular prism was length times width times height. And while there is absolutely nothing wrong with that, and it will work perfectly every time, once we get into junior high and high school, we stop talking about length, width, and height, and instead we use the formula volume is equal to the area of the base times the height. And the reason that we do that is because that will allow us to find the volume of rectangular prisms, triangular prisms, trapezoidal prisms, pretty much any kind of prism. So what we're going to do with this is we are going to find the volume of the rectangular prism that we have on the screen here, and we're going to find out what the base is and what the height is. So the nice thing about a rectangular prism is that the height and the base can be any of the sides. That's not true in everything, but with rectangular prisms it is. So for the sake of this problem, we're going to call this area right here the base of this rectangular prism. So if we want to find the area of the base, this goes back to finding area again, and we multiply base times height, which is, in this case, 10 times 5. So for our first part of our formula, we're going to have volume is equal to the area of the base is 10 times 5, which is 50. And then we're going to multiply that by the height, and in this case the height is the 6 inches, so it becomes 50 times 6. So then our final answer for this problem would be that the volume is equal to 300 and inches. And then the important thing to remember with volume is that it's a three-dimensional object. It has 3 dimensions, so everything is cubed. So the volume of this rectangular prism would be 300 inches cubed, or 300 cubic inches. The next thing we're going to look at is the volume of triangular prisms. Now this is where things might get a little bit confusing, but when we're dealing with prisms, especially if they're not rectangular, what we look for in the base is the only side of the prism that is repeated directly across from that side. So for example, in this case, the base is the actual triangle that we have on the prism because it is repeated on the other side again. So the base is the part where one side is repeated or symmetrical to the opposite side. Another way of looking at it is find the weirdest shape, and that's the base. So all of the other shapes would be rectangular. That's the only part of the prism that is not a rectangle. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use our formula just like we did on the last one, where we have volume is equal to the area of the base times the height. And like we said before, the base on this is the weirdest shape, or the one that's not a rectangle, and that would be our triangle. So let's start by finding the area of the triangle. Now remember, the area of a triangle is base times height, so in this case it's 8 times 7, and we're going to divide that by 2. So 8 times 7 is 56, divided by 2, and 56 divided by 2 is 28. So that's the area of the base, so we're going to put that into our equation. And then we have to multiply that by the height, and the height is the distance from one base to the other. So on our problem on the screen here, the 14 centimeters is the distance from one base to the other, so that's our height. So if we're looking for the volume, we're going to multiply 28 times 14. So let's go ahead and do that. Oops. Sorry about that. Got the wrong numbers there. Let's try this again. 28 times 14. 4 times 8 is 32. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 3 is 11. And then 1 times 8 and 1 times 2. So if we add these together, we end up with 392. So the volume then would be 392 centimeters squared. Oh, not squared. We're not dealing with area anymore. We are now dealing with volume. So it's actually centimeters cubed. So this is how you can find the volume of rectangular and triangular prisms. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to have a couple of practice problems. Do the first one, start the video again, and then do the second one. So here's your first problem, so go ahead and pause the video, solve it on your own. Okay, so let's go ahead and solve this problem now. So we have a rectangular prism with 3 different dimensions, and our base for this problem we're going to call this area right here between these 2 values. So our base is going to be 4 times 3, which is 12. So the volume is equal to area of the base, which is 12, times the distance from one base to the next, which is 10. So we have volume is equal to 12 times 10, which is 120. And this time we're dealing with feet, and again, cubic feet. So 120 cubic feet, or feet cubed. Okay, let's look at our next problem. And here we have a triangular prism again, and go ahead and pause and see if you can solve this on your own. So let's try this one now. Remember that the first thing we have to do is find the area of the base, and in this case, like before, the base is the triangle. So we have 1/2 base times height, or base times height divided by 2. So I have 3 and 4 as the base and height. So I need to figure out what is 1/2 times 3 times 4. So I'm going to multiply 3 and 4 first. That'll give me 12. And I need to figure out what 1/2 of 12 is, which is 6. So if I'm looking for volume, I'm going to have the area of the base, which is 6, times the height, the distance from one base to the next, which in this case is 7 meters. So 6 times 7 would give me a total of 42, and that would be my volume, 42 meters cubed. There we have it. That is how you can find the volume of a rectangular or a triangular prism.